What's your best? I've messed with the wrong person moment. Different kind of story. At work I had a chessboard and would play with various people during lunch. None of us were particularly great or anything. It was just a fun diversion. One day one of my coworkers came up, an older woman who was always very sweet and quiet, and asked if I wanted to play a game. She destroyed me. Like it wasn't even a close game. Towards the end I would make a move and she would just say, in the sweetest tone possible, "Oh, are you sure you want to make that move?" Destroyed. Turned out she had actually competed in some chess tournaments when she was younger, and both of her sons were active competitors.
That's a cool story. It's funny how you think you know someone's skills just by their demeanor. That older woman seemed unassuming, but then she just tore you apart at the chessboard. Just goes to show that people can surprise you. Makes me wonder what hidden talents others have at work too. Sometimes you just have to play a game to find out.
As an arrogant 14-year-old, I was at Sky Zone, a recreational place with a lot of trampolines. I was in the dodgeball section, and I told a 20-something man that was the #1 person on my people to get out list. This man was put on the other team, and he was a very athletic man. He proceeded to hurl these rubber dodgeballs at what seemed like the speed of sound as he eliminated my entire team 3 games in a row, saving me for last each game. Every time he got me alone, he hit me in the dick in front of all my friends. I should not have messed with him.
That sounds like a rough experience. Being young and cocky can really backfire sometimes. I get how in those moments, you can think you're untouchable, but reality hits hard. Getting hit like that, especially in front of friends, is pretty embarrassing. It's a lesson learned about humility, and maybe not challenging people who look way tougher than you. Sometimes, it's just best to keep quiet.
Not me, but a friend I was traveling with. When I was 20, we were in a DCA drum corps for the summer, on our way to a show in PA or something. We had stopped at a Wendy's to eat. While we were there, a group of bikers, obviously part of a club, came in the same Wendy's to eat. They sat behind us. My friend decided to try to hit me with his straw paper. His attempt went right past me and hit a biker in the back of the head. We go dead silent, waiting for a reaction. Nothing. We let out a deep sigh of relief and continue eating. As we are heading out the door, my friend decides to use the bathroom. I wait for him on the bus. A few minutes later, he comes flying out of the Wendy's, red-faced and looking terrified. Apparently, a biker had met him in the bathroom, cornered him, and explained, "I'm the nice kind of biker, so I'm going to let you off with a warning, but be aware that many bikers would be kicking your ass right now. Get out of here." That was the end of shooting straw paper.
So, my friend had this funny incident while we were on a trip. We were at a Wendy's when he tried to hit me with straw paper. He missed and hit a biker instead. We froze, waiting for the biker's reaction, but nothing happened. Later, in the bathroom, the same biker cornered him. Surprisingly, he was pretty chill, just warned my friend to think twice next time. Lesson learned, I guess.
It happened during Navy EA school. This guy Joe grew up in Brooklyn and spent much of his time boxing to stay off the streets. He was of Puerto Rican descent. He began flirting with a very pretty young lady of African-American heritage. This did not sit well with some of the other young sailors attending this fine school. One day he and I are exiting the mess hall and 3 guys jump him. I try to help him and he tells me this is not my fight. Joe beat the shit out of all 3 guys. One guy had a fractured orbital and he broke ribs on another guy. I stood by and did nothing. I didn't need to. I never saw anything like it. TLDR, don't mess with Joe. Edit. Changed on to 1.
I remember that at school time. Joe was something else. He would step up when things got tough, and that day was no different. I just watched as he handled those 3 guys. Joe had skills from boxing, and he used them. It was wild to see him turn the tables like that. Definitely a lesson learned, don't mess with him. He didn't need my help, and that was clear.
I'll share a story from the perspective of the guy you shouldn't fuck with. My little brother and I pull into a parking lot, and another car is coming at us from the opposite direction and was drifting into my lane a little bit. My bro reaches across the seat and honks my horn for me, and the car moves back over, slams on the brakes, does a quick turn, and starts tailing me as I park. I pick a spot, and the car stops in the lane behind me, and this dude gets out of the car with a super angry scowl and starts heading over to my door like he's got a problem. I look at my bro and go, "Way to go, dumbass," and step out, and the dude stops dead in his tracks when he realizes I'm basically a monster at almost 7 tall and 300 plus pounds. He doesn't even say anything and just dips back into his car and peels out, and my brother and I start laughing our asses off. Then I hit him for touching my horn.
Sounds like a classic case of the right guy showing up at the wrong time. The other dude probably thought he was tough until he met you. It's good your brother has your back, even if it was a bit reckless. Gotta love how some people back down when they realize who they're dealing with. Definitely a funny moment, and it'll be a story to tell later, just maybe not about the horn thing.
A high school friend and his buddies were drunkenly throwing snowballs at cars from an elevated bluff above a fairly busy street. Apparently, one of his victims took exception, looped around, and parked. He approached him from behind and took one swing at my friend with a machete. One of his friends warned him, so he was able to raise his arm. He happened to be wearing 2 leather jackets at the time, so the machete only cut halfway through his arm right below the elbow. Had he not been warned, it would have been his neck. Afterwards, the attacker, described to me as an old Filipino-looking dude, walked back to his car, drove away, never to be seen again.
That's a wild story. Your friend's luck really kicked in that day. It's crazy how a night of fun can turn into something so serious in a split second. Wearing those leather jackets probably saved him from a worse fate. But the whole situation is a reminder that you never know how someone will react. Sounds like a scene straight out of a crazy movie, but it happened in real life.
When I was 14, my brother, one of my longtime mentors and heroes, took me to NYC for my birthday. He was 29 at the time and was on leave from the military. He had left 1st Ranger Battalion and just finished the Army Special Forces Q course, Green Beret. By all accounts, he was and still is a bad mama jamma. He is incredibly quiet and soft-spoken and very gentle. We were on the subway headed to Times Square, and I was standing next to him, both of us holding a vertical rail in the train. From the next compartment, a group of young urban troubadours were passing roughly through the crowd and shoulder-bumping people to get through. When they bumped into my brother, it was like waves crashing into a rock. They eyed him, and the leader of the group said something along the lines of, "Who the fuck are you? Are you supposed to be tough or something?" To which my brother calmly responded, "Actually, I am tough. If you care to find out for yourselves, let's wait until we're off the train. I'd hate to leave a mess in here." They made the wise choice of leaving at the next stop.
That's a memorable moment. Your brother sounds like a solid guy, quietly confident. It's interesting how some people just command respect without being loud about it. The way he handled the situation was smart, just simple strength. It's also a good reminder that what looks tough on the outside isn't always the real deal. That trip must have been a good bonding experience too. I bet you both still remember it.
I was outside of a bar, late in a night of drinking, on a friend's last night in town. I was shit-faced. Now, this bar has a door that doesn't close behind you. It was cold, and I was fucking sick of people just leaving it fucking open while they stood there and smoked. Finally, I snapped at some dude, and I drunkenly go, "Hey man, there are only 2 kinds of people in this world. People who check to make sure a door is shut for the benefit of others, and assholes like you who just expect that shit to shut behind their entitled ass." Guy reaches into his pocket, tells me he could be some crazy guy, and I should really think about fucking with him, and my friend pulls me away while I curse at him. She then tells me that he is her friend's coke dealer and totally crazy and had just gotten out of jail and probably had a gun. Yeah, bought him a cheap beer and got the fuck out of there.
That night outside the bar was something else. I remember being pretty drunk, just venting about the door not shutting. I snapped at some guy, not realizing he was trouble. My friend was quick to pull me away when I started cursing. Turns out, he was a dealer, fresh out of jail. It was a wake-up call, so I bought him a beer and we dipped out. Better safe than sorry.
When I was 20, I tried to mess with my father. I've been taking martial arts for a few years and figured I could get my father in an arm lock. I'm 6'5" and 250 pounds while my father was 5 inches shorter and around 40 pounds lighter. So I figured how hard could it be? Well, he was in the kitchen, so I started to try and get him into a lock when he decided his youngest son needed to be shown who was in charge. He grabbed a hold of my hand and just crushed my fingers in his grip. I was wearing a ring, and the feeling my fingers crushing together in his grip made my mind blank, and I quickly remembered that, while my father had no fight training, he did spend most of his life on a farm wrangling oxen, and so had an iron grip. Needless to say, I tries not to cross him after that.
That's a wild story. It's funny how we think we have the upper hand sometimes. Your dad put you in check real quick with that grip. Just goes to show that experience can beat skill, especially when it comes to family. It's a good lesson on respecting strengths, even if someone looks like they don't have any. Sounds like you learned to pick your battles after that.
Back when I was in 4th or 5th grade, my friends and I used to wrestle on the school bus. We had this ancient lady for a bus driver, and she either didn't care or didn't notice. Well, I was the reigning champion and would even take my friends on 2 versus 1 and win. One day, there's a new kid on the bus, a small Asian boy. On the way home, I sit in his seat next to him and I say something along the lines of, "If you're gonna ride my bus, you gotta wrestle me." Well, this small little Asian boy hooped my ass the whole ride home. After that, we included him into our group of friends. I wonder what he's up to these days.
That sounds like a fun time. It's interesting how a new kid can change the dynamic. You go in thinking you're the best, then someone surprises you. It's cool you included him after that. It's funny how those random moments stick with you. Makes you think about all the different paths people take after school. I hope he's doing well, wherever he is now.
So I'm an EMT. We pick up this belligerently drunk, like mid-20s male from the side of the road. I generally don't like being in the back of an ambulance with a dude bigger and more violent than I am. So I'll ask for a cop to ride in the back on occasion. So dude was big, tattooed up, a real meathead, and wanted to fight someone. So I asked for a police ride along. I get this 5'1" woman who must weigh 120 pounds soaking wet. We start riding toward the MTF, and he is just getting even more ridiculous. So as I'm trying to calm this guy a bit, this woman steps up and tells the guy to sit down and let me do my job. He doesn't like getting bossed around by homegirl, so he starts yelling and trying to get off the gurney. She just put up her hand and said she would tase him if she got to 3. He stands up, takes a step forward, and she just says 3. No countdown, no warning. The look of horror in this guy's eyes as he realized what was about to happen was totally worth a grown man pissing himself in my rig. I request her all the time now.
That's a wild story. It's funny how sometimes the smallest person can have the most authority in a room. The shock on that guy's face must have been incredible when he realized what was about to happen. It's always a bit nerve-wracking dealing with someone who's out of control, but having someone like her backing you up makes a big difference. You never know who's going to surprise you.
My dad has a great story from when he was stationed in Japan during Nam. He was at a bar drinking sake out of a huge ceramic jug and hitting on a pretty girl. Then a sumo wrestler walks in. Immediately, every female in the place drops everything to fawn over him. Dad's pissed that the sumo wrestler stole his prospect, so he smashes his sake bottle over the back of the guy's head. Instead of being knocked out as intended, the sumo wrestler just slowly turns and smiles at my dad. Then he picks him up, carries him over to the toilet, which in this establishment is essentially a hole in the ground, and stuffs him in there up to his neck.
That's a wild story. Your dad sounds like he really went for it. I can't imagine the shock on his face when that wrestler just smiled instead of getting mad. Getting stuffed in a toilet is a pretty rough way to lose a fight, though. Just goes to show that some situations can turn out way differently than you expect. At least he has a memorable tale from that night.
Throwaway time, since the guy in the story is a Redditor. My buddy is a big dude, 6 feet 1 inch and over 250 pounds. He's overweight in the same sense that so are NFL defensive linemen, i.e., he could probably bench press Ops Mom. For the most part, he's a giant teddy bear, super laid back and smokes a lot of pot. Until this, the angriest Eve ever seen him as mildly irritated. A group of us are at a local bar, sitting on the patio one night when a group of drunk guys walks by and gropes my buddy's girlfriend. Before anyone can stop him, he has the guy by the hair and is smashing him face first into the picnic table. He then proceeds to throw him to the ground, jumps on 2 of him, and starts strangling him with his bare hands. It took 4 people to pull him off the guy. We finally have my buddy restrained, and the other guy has been helped off and let out. My buddy takes a deep breath and just says in his normal tone, "I'm cool. Somebody give me a cigarette." TLDR. For certain actions, the consequences are swift and severe.
Sounds like your buddy has a real protective side. It's crazy how a chill person can change in an instant when someone crosses a line. The way he handled that situation showed he really cares about his girlfriend. But then going right back to calm afterward is almost impressive. Guess some people just know when to switch gears.
I was friends with a girl who was only 4 feet 11 inches at 17. Her father was a judo instructor, so she'd been learning forever. She was in a competition and had to enter one weight class up due to lack of entries. The opponent was a girl at the top of that weight class, older, much taller, and just generally bigger than she was. She got this girl down in an armlock submission hold, but she refused to submit, so my friend just kept adding the pressure. The referee was right there asking her if she wanted to tap out too, but she wouldn't. Cracked, went her shoulder, broken in 2 places.
That's tough to hear. It's wild how a competition can push someone to that point. You'd think the opponent might have tapped out after the first sign of injury, but some people just don't. It's impressive that your friend had the skill to pull off that move, even against the odds. But it makes you wonder about the line between determination and safety in sports.
We were in a traffic jam. A car was trying to force his way in front of us. They rode up on the shoulder and then wanted into our lane. But my husband was feeling surly and not letting the car in. They forced their way in, so my husband laid on the horn and yelled. 3 guys hopped out of the car. The driver had a baseball bat. I screamed out the window that we were sorry. They yelled at my husband to get out of the car. My husband apologized and they called him some names and then went back to their car. We then had to sit in traffic behind them for the next 20 minutes.
Traffic jams can really bring out the worst in people. Your husband probably just got fed up with the situation. It's wild how fast things escalated. The guys seemed ready to throw down but ended up just yelling. Tough spot to be in, stuck behind them after that. At least the apology might have cooled things down a bit. Just another day in the city, I guess. Traffic does weird things to folks.
Obligatory, not me, but story. But I worked with a guy who went to Wales with his friends on a holiday. One day they went to the pub and this man, quite unassuming, takes offense to my colleague's friend. It literally descends into the guy asking if his mate if he wanted to take it outside. My colleague's friend fancied the odds, so said okay. They get outside, and the older man knocks my colleague's friend the fuck out with 1 punch. Turns out the random Welsh man used to be Joe Calzaga's sparring partner.
That's a wild story. It's funny how things can escalate so quickly, especially in a pub. The unexpected happens all the time. That friend probably didn't think hitting the pavement was on the agenda for the night. You never really know who you're messing with, I guess. A sparring partner for a champ like Calzaga? Yeah, that's a lesson learned the hard way.
Went with about 4 friends to a large party and quickly realized we were out of place / younger than everyone else there. After a few minutes being there, I see some guy who sold me and my friends bad drugs and go straight up to him. I started talking shit and really just wanted him to admit to fucking us over. Then after the argument gets very heated, he decides to add, "This is my house and my party." My tone immediately changed as I only had a few friends with me and he had a whole party circled around me. I tried to leave, got circled outside. For the first / only time in my life I got my ass kicked, and all I could do was sit there and take it, considering if I actually got any good swings off on him, 10 guys would jump me. So I took the beating, then left. TLDR, confronted POS dealer at a party. Come to find out it's his party. An ass whooping ensues.
So, I went to this party with some friends, and we realized we were way younger than everyone else. I ended up confronting a guy who sold us fake drugs. Things escalated quickly, and he reminded me it was his party. I tried to back off, but it was too late. I got jumped and just had to sit there and take it. Not my proudest moment, but at least I left with my friends.
Subway in New York. Train stops. Huge hulking businessman in nice suit gets pissed off that someone won't get out of his way. Has standoff. But the other guy is another huge hulking business guy in nice suit. First guy throws himself into a grapple with the second guy. They're each using their bulk because for each of them, that had always been the game-winning move. The subway car clears out in a hurry as these titans scramble around the car. And then there's a heavy breathing pause as these two huge guys, still caught in a violent embrace, realize that they're evenly matched for probably the first time in their lives. They push apart and silently go their separate ways.
Ever been on a busy subway and witnessed something wild? I saw these two big business guys go at it once. They were both in suits, looked like they had never backed down from a fight. They got into a grapple, and the whole car cleared out fast. Then they both just stopped, realizing neither could win. It was kind of funny seeing these two giants just walk away without a word.
Friends and I decided to hide in the ditch by my driveway, and when cars drove by an average of 50 miles per hour, throw water balloons at them. Well, we hit a ram like 85,000. We see after impact his brake lights and he starts to slow as he comes to the end of the road where he could keep going. He turns around. We scatter. I was fat and out of shape, so I decide to test my maneuvering skills and hide behind a tree. This truck goes by my driveway like 4 times super slow, then pulls halfway up my driveway, which is about 100 yards, and stops. Car door opens. It's so cold you can see your breath, so I am hiding behind a tree, maybe 15 yards away, trying to breath as little as possible. He gets in his car, backs down, and checks one more time if he can see us before leaving. I played out how that scenario could have gone, and I definitely messed with the wrong person who just so happened to give up.
Sounds like a risky game. Hiding and hoping he didn't spot you must have been intense. The tension of him coming back a few times must have felt like forever. It's wild how a simple prank can escalate like that. I guess it taught you a lesson about picking your targets wisely. Sometimes it's better to just chill and not stir the pot too much.
Finally, a story I can tell. I'll start by saying I'm 6 feet tall and weighed about 150 pounds at the time. It was my senior year of high school. I was cutting weight for a wrestling tournament, and to get my mind away from the misery, I decided to go downtown with my friends one night. We went to this bar, and after a little while, if I took a morning run, I could get a small cup of orange juice, my favorite kind of juice, and a small treat. I get my juice and sip it while I hang out with my friends. Suddenly, this big bouncer, probably about 6 feet 3 inches and around 260, walks up to me and begins questioning what's in my cup. I told him it was orange juice. Apparently, he didn't believe me, grabbed my cup, and threw it in a garbage can. I was pissed because he had taken my liquid gold and tossed it, and as he reached his arm out to grab me, take me out, I grabbed his arm and hip-tossed him onto his back, knocking the wind out of him. Then I walked out of the bar. Don't mess with my orange juice.
That's an interesting situation. Cutting weight can be tough, And it's kind of funny how something as simple as orange juice becomes such a big deal. I guess the bouncer didn't expect you to stand up for yourself like that. It's wild how adrenaline kicks in when you're defending something you care about. I wonder if he ever thought twice about tossing someone's drink again. Probably a memorable night for you and your friends.
My dad told me him and his brother were driving down the highway when some guy was tailgating them, so they switched lanes, and so did he, and after some road rage, they both pulled over. Now my dad and his brother are some pretty big muscle Italian guys, so when he told me that the guy who got out of the other car was the biggest man he's ever seen, then he must have been huge. Apparently my uncle got into it with the guy and pulled a pipe wrench out of the truck bed and domed him with it. The guy didn't flinch at all, and my dad and his brother jumped into their truck and got out of there quickly.
That's a wild story. It's interesting how road rage can escalate so quickly. Your dad and uncle must have really been caught off guard by that huge guy. Pulling a pipe wrench is something you don't see every day, but it sounds like it didn't do much against this dude either. Sometimes it's better to just get away, especially when things are getting out of hand like that.
I was really good friends with this girl freshman year in high school. We had been friends since junior high, but there were a lot of new kids coming into the school because it was a good high school. Anyway, she ended up dating this guy who was new to the school. He was your average giant overgrown ape of a freshman. Starting fullback, popular with the girls. However, he was ugly as all hell. But you know how it is? The biggest kid gets the ladies. As a joke, I told her that her boyfriend resembled Shrek, and she made a side-by-side comparison on her phone and left it there. He then saw it and found out it was me who had said that he resembled Shrek. He wanted to fight me, and I was scared out of my mind. I stood there at 5 feet 6 inches and 108 pounds and just hid among the crowd until that whole thing died down about a week later. I wasn't about to fight the 6 feet 0 inches, 185 pounds fullback.
That sounds like a classic high school moment. You never really know how things will play out when you say something jokingly. It's funny how quickly a comment can spiral into a whole situation. I can imagine the anxiety of dealing with a guy like that, especially when you're smaller. Hiding in the crowd seems like a smart choice at the time. It's just funny how those moments stick with you later.
This is a sports one. I played high school football in NJ. Our high school was a perennial power, and we always had plenty of all-county, all-league, all-group, all-state guys. Leading up to a game against Moorestown High School, we kept hearing about this stud sophomore running back that was coming into the season as the unquestioned lead back for that team. We played them in the opening game of the season and all kind of bristled at the fact that all the talk leading up to the game was about this 15-year-old kid that hadn't done anything to earn the attention. We started the game off with 3 monster hits in 3 straight plays, and the defense was fired up and talking all kinds of shit. Fast forward to the end of the game, and this kid ended up totally gashing us for about 275 total yards, though we still won. For college football fans, this kid was Albert Young. He ended up becoming the all-time leading rusher in South Jersey, the South Jersey Offensive Player of the Decade, and future Iowa Hawkeye.
Sounds like a solid game. You hear a lot about hype around young players, but that kid made a statement. It's wild how confidence can turn into performance. Even with all the trash talk, it must have been something to see him rush like that. Winning despite the stats shows the team's strength too. Always interesting to look back on these moments, especially when they involve future stars.
In this rare instance, I was the one not to be messed with. My sister and I were cruising bars in DFW. In the entrance to a particular bar is a very drunk man, eyeballing the police officers standing outside. My sister walks in, and he proceeded to grab her by the arms. I step in between them, breaking his grip. He proceeds to grab me by the wrists. Now I am a 5 feet 7 inches woman, quiet, soft-spoken, with years of martial arts training and a fear of being grabbed by strangers. So this drunk ass received about 4 elbows to the stomach. The police stepped in and said they had been waiting for the fellow to step outside. They let my sister and I go. I was terrified they would arrest me, as I did strike him first. Please, they did not.
That sounds intense. It's wild how quickly things can escalate in situations like that. Your instincts kicked in, and it's impressive you stood your ground. Even though you were scared, you handled that guy well. It's good the police were already there to step in. Must have been a relief not to face any consequences after defending yourself and your sister. Sometimes, you just have to trust your instincts.
One kid I went to school with and played hockey against got the bright idea to start bullying me in high school. I was by no means a small kid nor fat. I was 6 feet and weighed about 200 pounds. He made fun of me for being fat all the time despite only being chubby. So when we played his team, I had a good friend on his team give him a suicide pass so I could hit him hard. Well, my friend could not have set this kid up better for getting hit. Straight from behind him and between his feet. I had a good speed going because I knew it was going to happen. I hit him as hard as I could and knocked him out cold. Everyone was stunned. This little prick who had always bullied me was now laying there unconscious. The rink was silent until my 70-year-old coach started giggling like a schoolgirl. I was pretty close to him, so he knew why I hit the kid so hard. The kid never played hockey again and never came near me or made fun of me again.
There was this kid in school who thought it was cool to bully me. He'd make fat jokes all the time. One day, during a game, I decided enough was enough. My friend helped me set him up for a hit. It was perfect. I nailed him hard, and he went down. The silence was crazy until my coach started laughing. After that, the kid didn't mess with me again.
This boy who had been attempting to bully me had failed. Despite being a year younger, I was about 3 inches taller and a hell of a lot tougher. To add some background, I was 10 and he was 11. He decided that to get me pissed off, he'd start on my 6-year-old sister. He approaches her one day in the park when she's playing on her skateboard. She's a tomboy, and starts ranting off at her, calling her a whore. Then he makes the mistake of shoving her. What he didn't know was that our dad had taught both me and my sister how to fight at a young age. My sister kicked him in the nuts, then walloped him with a skateboard. He learned his lesson. Never pick on a girl unless you're certain she's harmless, and even then don't try. TLDR, bully goes after my sister, learns that girls aren't all sugar and spice and all things nice.
That's a solid story. It's good to see someone stand up for their sibling. It's wild how some people don't realize who they're messing with. Kids can surprise you, especially when they've got the skills to defend themselves. That bully definitely got a lesson he won't forget anytime soon. It's a reminder that toughness isn't just about size or age.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.